to Heritage Spinning and Weaving. We're really sorry that we're not with you this year at Allegan, but this is an unusual opportunity for us to bring our store to you in a unique way. You've seen our booth. Now you'll get to see a little about our store. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will give you a tour of the store. Today we're going to focus on the most popular things that we sell in Allegan. I've been doing Fair Isle knitting for almost 15 years now, and we stock all the colors of Jameson Spindrift all year round. And every year for the last at least 10 years, we've brought all of them to Allegan for you to see. The colors are amazing, the combinations are endless. We design our own patterns, and we also have kits for some of the Shetland Wool Week hats. So I'm going to show you the hats, and we will start with this year's Michigan Fiber Fest hat, and it is the Great Lakes hat, and it was the motif came out of the class that I taught last year for last year's hat, and this lighthouse is inspired by a lighthouse on Isle Royal, and the lighthouse light itself is actually beads, and you can see the shoreline, and on the top the waves, or if you prefer, the sky, and we definitely have waves around the bottom. Now the cool thing about this hat is that it has a secret message. It says Michigan Fiber Fest 2020, the initials of Cherie, who made this, and anchors to remind us of our great state. But wait, there, did you see the sheep? Fiber Fest isn't complete without sheep. This kit is available now on our website, and again, this is the Michigan Fiber Fest 2020 hat. And here's what our kits look like, and they're wound with exactly the amount of yarn you need. Well, actually, more than the amount of yarn you need, because I hate getting calls that say I ran out of yarn. So we're very generous in our measurements, and you will find in this kit even the beads and the bead applicator. Last year's hat is called Woolly Friends, and the Woolly Friends hat has alpaca and sheep, and again the waves motif for our Great Lakes, snowflakes, because in spite of everything we do manage to get snow, and at the very top, pine trees. If you remember from elementary school, the white pine is our state tree. This kit is also available on our website. And I will be designing another one for 2021. And if you'd like to put ideas for motifs in the comments today, I would be happy to incorporate them into my thought process as I brainstorm for next year's hat. Fair Isle knitting has experienced a resurgence around the world, and literally around the world. A huge part of that is the result of a group on Facebook called Fair Isle Fisherman's Cap, and it was started by Ann Sinclair, or Ann Sinclair's Pattern, and through the group you can order a pattern that is a recipe, and the proceeds from the pattern go to support the museum on Fair Isle. Now, Fair Isle is a real place, and it's 150 to 200 miles north of Scotland. It's part of the Shetland archipelago. And Shetland, over the decades, was a seafaring land. And women would knit for their men that were at sea, and they would also knit and their knitted goods would be sent off around the world to support their families. So the Fair Isle Fishermen's Kep group brought the Kep tradition, that's spelled K-E-P, and this is what a Fair Isle Fisherman's Kep looks like. It has a tassel, and it's extra long, so that if it's really cold, you can roll it up and get your ears warmer. Some say that if you went overboard, the tassel will float and they can find you. I'm not sure about that. But these Keps are very, very comfortable to wear. And I have my own that's made out of natural colors, and I wear it all winter long. So this one is the first one that I knit, and it is made out of traditional Fair Isle colors, colors of the earth and colors of the sheep. Here's another one I did with leftovers from a sweater I was working on, and just playing with the motifs. This bottom band is a traditional pattern. It's X's and O's. Here's the X, and here's the O. And you will see this repeated in throughout Fair Isle knitting patterns, whether it be a sweater or a hat or mittens. And these patterns up here are, most of them are called Peeries. They're small, they're short, and they're widthwise and heighthwise, they're small. Peerie means small in Shetland. So let's look at some more traditional hats. One of the things that we do is that we package designs from Shetland, and this is a yarn pack that has been knit up, and it's called Harriet's Cap. And Harriet's Cap was designed as a fundraiser for Shetland. And they don't have an MRI machine on the island. If somebody needs an MRI, they have to go to the mainland, or excuse me, not to the mainland, to Scotland. And that's a ferry ride overnight or a bumpy airplane ride. But no matter, it adds to the expense, and it makes it quite hard to get medical care when it's urgently needed. So this hat has raised a lot of money toward the Shetlanders getting an MRI close to them. Then we go to the Shetland Wool Week hats, which is where I got the idea to do the Michigan Fiber Fest hats. This is the very first Shetland Wool Week hat, and it was designed by Hazel Tyndall, and it's called the Schwook for Shetland Wool Week. So this is the Schwook, and it comes in multiple colors and sizes, and we have yarn packs for it as well. All of the Shetland Wool Week patterns are available on Ravelry. We don't sell them. Here's another Shetland Wool Week. This is the roadside beanie. See, it's got all different kinds of sheep all the way around the edge. And the top is kind of fun as well. This is the Crofthouse hat. Crofthouse is a farmhouse in Shetland. Crofters are the farmers, and often in the old Shetland houses, the barn was on one side of the building, the house was on the other side of the building, just different doors to get in and out. So this is honoring the Crofthuses, and a lovely top. One of the most popular Shetland Wool Week hats is the bobble hat. And you see there, again, there are all different kinds of sheep around the edge. And this one is worked in stonehead shepherd's wool, and we have the yarn pack for it as well, with a fun little pom-pom. This is a take on the Miri Dancer's hat. The Miri Dancer hat has more colors than how I knit it, but the pattern is the same, and that's the fun thing with Fair Isle knitting. You can change the colors to be what you want. I didn't want to deal with 8 different colors, so I took 3 when I went on vacation and made this hat. And Miri Dancers is what they call the Northern Lights. This year's hat is really dramatic. This is Katie's cap, and the colors just glow, don't they? And this top is one of my favorites. Again, we have a yarn pack for this, and this cap pattern, if you go to ShetlandWoolWeek.com, is still out there and free for the download. So we've been to Shetland, we've been to Michigan Fiber Fest, and now I think we will go to Northern Michigan. This is a hat that I called the Freedom Cap, and it is made out of worsted weight shepherd's wool, and the motif to me looks like a butterfly. And when a friend was going through cancer and she got her all clear, she drew a painting of butterflies and made it into a greeting card and sent it to us. And I will never forget that. Sadly, BR is no longer with us, but this hat remains as a memorial to her. And this hat comes in 3 different colorways, so a more masculine colorway and a less bright colorway as well. This is our Field of Sheep hat. All the sheep are the same, so it makes it easy for a beginner. It's made out of shepherd's wool. The top is plain, so that makes it easy for a beginner. And it has the feature of having a really nice hem to it, so a beginner can learn how to make a hem, and it makes it extra thick so it's nice and warm. Not only that, but many of the long floats are covered up from the sheep. I took a class from TKGA on mosaic knitting, and I really had fun with it. My favorite part was garter stitch mosaic, and I made this hat as a result of that class. Now, what's interesting about this hat is that the mosaic part is knit flat, and then you learn how to do a garter stitch join. That's the join, and then you pick up along the edge, and the rest is simple and easy knitting, just plain, but it's striking. A couple other hats that we have on display. These are knit in a combination of our Norwegian fennel garn and Shetland spindrift. And this is a Ruth Sorensen hat. The pattern packet can be found online. Both of these hats are in that pattern. And one of the other colors, or one of the other yarns that's used in here is County. Both of them have beads added, so that's always a fun, easy thing to do to your Fair Isle to spice it up a little. Now let's go to Norway. This is my Shades of Norway hat, and every time I look at this, I think of the first time that I landed in Oslo Airport, and as we were on our approach, I could see these majestic pine trees, evergreens, And so I put different versions of them around the hat, and you can actually, the pattern is written so that you can place them where you like them. Now the colors I chose, the red and the orange, are colors of many of the houses that are in Norway out in the country. Another favorite Norwegian wool that we have is called tumi. And tumi is half alpaca and half wool. And this hat is called Birds on a Wire. Simple top, but it ends with a triple bobble, just to give it a little zing. Also in tumi, same hat, different colorway. Just mixing it up a little bit can make a big difference. Another Norway-inspired hat, I call this the harbor hat. I was sitting on the harbor having lunch in Oslo, and I looked down at the coaster under my drink, and this X motif was on it. And the more I looked at it, the more fascinating it was to me. And as I walked around the fort, I saw where the motif came from. It came from the doors in one of the barns. So I incorporated the X motif on the top, and the bottom is the Selbu star, and there are beads in this hat. Now we'll get to my designs that are true Fair Isle. They use Fair Isle patterns, and mostly all of these only have two colors in one row, or one color. Some rows are single and solid, but there aren't three colors, and the motifs come from the Fair Isle tradition. This is the Diamond Rose, and this is actually a hat that we're doing a class on now, and you can, it's a Zoom class, and we have a couple openings left. It starts on Tuesday. One of the things that is characteristic of of Fair Isle knitting is that there are shades of colors. So in the background in this band, you can see that it shades from light blue to dark blue, and the flower shades from dark red to light. So very characteristic, and it's got a lovely top. This is a hat that I made for my dad, designed for my dad, and it's called the Northwoods hat, and it uses all traditional Shetland fleece colors except for the red, which is madder, which is also a very traditional colorant. And here's the top. It kind of looks like a spider's web. And if you do one for dad, you have to do one for mom. So this is the one that I did for my mom. It's called Just Peachy, and it reminds me of her flower gardens. The colors, the softness, it looks like a flower garden to me. But the color says peachy, so Just Peachy it was named. And here's the top. It looks like a flower as well. If you're just getting started into Fair Isle knitting, my first Fair Isle hat is a great place to begin. This uses one color, blue, throughout, and then the individual colors change one at a time. So you only have to weave in one new color. The blue stays constant. That makes it easier. And if you remember, these are Piri patterns, small, little. And at the top, I always think this looks like a vegetable garden. But it's a great place to begin your Fair Isle adventure. Another simple early Fair Isle cap is our anniversary hat. And this uses Puri patterns. There's X's in there, and the X's are two of them together, Roman numerals for 20, so that's our 20th anniversary hat. And it uses 8 different heathered shades of Jameson Spindrift. And the top pulls them all together. Well, I made one for my mom and one for my dad. I also made this one for my daughter, who was about 15 at the time and refused to wear it. But I liked it. And it is hearts and flowers. So each of the flowers is made up of hearts, multiple hearts. And it was my way to say, I love you. Darn kids. Here's the top. So that's the Hearts and Flowers Fair Isle cap. And this cap is in 2 versions, a shorter version and a longer version. And I called it the Archipelago hat, and I named it after Shetland, or Fair Isle, and because it is such a traditional, the motifs are so traditional. And here's the top. And when you compare it to how it looks in a different colorway, they do look different. Just a change of color, same pattern. So you can choose when you order your kit to get a green one or a blue one. And oh no, I still have more. Here is one for the dog. This is Molly, the Molly dog hat. And I think that these motifs look like paw prints. But in reality, they're a motif that I copied from an antique coverlet at the Henry Ford Museum. One day a week, when, not since COVID, but I will be going back, I work in the textile conservation department at the Henry Ford. And I get to see textiles that are very, very special. And the coverlets, I always look at them for the different motifs and how they might influence my Fair Isle design. Or I really should say my stranded knitting design. Because if the motif isn't from Fair Isle, I shouldn't call it Fair Isle. It is stranded knitting. And stranded knitting means that the yarn is carried across the back. You can see how it's almost as pretty on the back side as it is on the front. But just because it's stranded doesn't mean it's Fair Isle. So this is the Molly dog hat, and here's the top. And this has got a little different treatment because the decrease style changes from a double central decrease to a slip one, knit two together, pass the slip stitch over to give this feathered look in the very center of it. And I really like that little detail. And last but not least are some other stranded knitting hats. This is Breaking Waves. And once a year I go to a place in Door County, Wisconsin to teach. It's called The Clearing. If you're ever bored and you want to look up a beautiful place, look it up on YouTube, look it up on Facebook or their website, theclearing.org. And The Clearing is one of the most beautiful places on earth. I designed this when I was spending some time in the Cliff House. And the Cliff House is a little one-room, no potty, no kitchen, just a bed and a fireplace hut perched on the side of Lake Michigan. And you can hear the waves and see the sunset, and it's just glorious. So I spent the day there, and this hat was designed there. And it uses wool from America, 100% Rambouillet from Swans Island. And we have kit for it as well. And last but not least is another example of how when you change the colors, you change the whole look. These hats are exactly the same. One very bright, one a little more sedate, and they are my interpretation of a krokbrog pattern. Krokbrog is a Scandinavian weaving technique, and it lends itself well to replication in stranded knitting because it's a repetition of 4 stitches, if you will, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All the way around, all of these motifs can be recreated on a loom or in knitting. One thing that can you get me the loom? One thing that I should talk to you about is a video that I just did for Long Thread Media. And I taught a technique called turned krokbrog. That one. Thank you. This is taking the same motif that I interpreted in knitting, or a similar one, and interpreted it on the inkle loom. And what's interesting about krokbrog on the inkle is that it's different on the back side than the front side. So if you're interested in taking a next step from plain inkle weaving, Lisa, can I have that? So here's plain inkle weaving, and here's krokbrog. Plain inkle weaving is where you start, and then your next step is can be turned krokbrog. They're both loom-controlled techniques, and we have the supplies and the looms here at the shop. In both of the weaving and the knitting, you get such a chance to play with color, and I hope that that's what you take away from our talk today, is having some freedom with color and playing, and be willing to change and mix it up. And if you have questions, feel free to email me, joan@heritagespinning.com. Our website is in the comments, and we look forward to having you come in a real live in-person visit. We're currently open from Tuesday through Saturday from 11 to 5. We allow 4 people in the store, 4 customers in the store at a time. Most of our classes are online via Zoom, but we do have some classes that are in person here in the store. Have a wonderful time at the rest of FiberFest, and we look forward to seeing you soon.